Good afternoon. How are you doing today? My name is Dominique. I am the owner of Body and Mind Fitness located in London, Lambeth, Ontario. And what do? I'm a personal trainer and a small group yoga instructor who helps women build and reclaim their strength and confidence from the inside out with specialized training in pelvic health. And today is the part 2 of 4 of my What to Do If Kegels Aren't For You series, which all stemmed from a statement I made in a blog that I wrote recently where I mentioned that Kegels might not be for you, and my inbox was flooded with questions about, well, if I'm not doing Kegels, what is there to do with my pelvic health? So if you're interested in part 1, it is now available as a replay on YouTube as well as on this Facebook page, so you can check that out because some of the things that we'll touch on today do have to do with that video. So if you are tuning in to the replay, definitely hashtag replay. If you are live right now, say hello. I'd love to know that you're there. So let's get started, shall we? That's like 1 minute and 17 seconds of me kind of doing my little intro. So today is all about breath awareness. So when I first start working with a client, when we are specifically working on pelvic health, whether it's incontinence, pelvic organ prolapse, pain in the pelvic area, lower back area, hip area, painful sex, I always start with first alignment, which is what part 1 was about, and the next step is becoming aware of your breath. So a lot of people make this assumption that when there is, for instance, incontinence, which is what I had personally after my firstborn, that it means you have to do your Kegels. You're weak, your pelvic floor is weak, you had a baby, you're aging, you need to do your Kegels. However, there are studies that show that just having an awareness of the movement of your pelvic floor as you breathe naturally can have a profound effect on your pelvic health. So just a little bit of rewind here, because I know some of you may be joining me for the very first time. The pelvic floor is one part of what is known as the core 4. So the core 4 involve your pelvic floor, your diaphragm, your transversus abdominis, which are your innermost abdominal muscles, and your multifidi, which I always thought kind of looks like a braid running up the length of your spine. When these muscles are all working together synergistically, they're all firing up the way they should, then everything's good and golden. But sometimes instances in our life happen where our alignment isn't right, the diaphragm and the pelvic floor aren't stacked on top of each other, and that's where things start to go a little bit wonky for some of us. So sometimes you may not have any symptoms at all, and sometimes you do. Regardless of the fact, I always recommend all of my clients, all of my students to visit their friendly neighborhood pelvic floor physiotherapist, because they have the ability to do an internal exam, which is way outside of my scope of practice, and can give you insight into exactly what is going on involving your pelvic floor with that internal exam. But if you don't have access, some of these pointers will definitely help you down the road. So the only thing that you're going to need for this particular thing is a stability ball, which I'll show you when I back away from the camera, as well as I like to use a yoga strap. If you have one of the stretchy bands, it works as well, but I kind of like the fact that this doesn't really move, so you can get more feedback, and I'll show you how to use that in a little bit. If you don't have a stability ball, something else you can use is like a rolled up towel or blanket. There's also kind of mini stability balls. I really like using those on a chair, to be honest, because they're much smaller and you can really connect with your pelvic floor a little bit more. But regardless of what you have, there's something, rolled up towel, I'm sure many of us have, or a rolled up blanket, even a pillow, and everything else kind of applies. You would just be doing something slightly different. So I'm going to back away from the camera. That was awkward, wasn't it? So going back to last week's video, we want to make sure that we maintain that natural curvature in the lower back. Oh, my ball's rolling away. So we want to push the hips back and down. And when you do this right away, you're going to feel like you are sitting up a little bit taller. If you have any instances of lower back pain, then this should help to alleviate that almost immediately. Another thing you can do is sort of lift and move your glute muscles out of the way, so that way when you're sitting on the ball, you should actually feel like the stability ball is pressing against your pelvic floor, and this is where you're going to get the feedback from. So the first thing you can do is get yourself in a position where your feet are planted on the floor, 90-degree bend in the hip, 90-degree bend in the knee. I usually start this off, I can hear my phone going off in the background, how awkward is that? So usually what I end up doing is actually have people starting with this laying down, but for this particular exercise I want to make sure that we're getting that biofeedback from the ball. So sitting up nice and tall, we want to soften the rib cage down. And you can even close your eyes, because when you close your eyes and shut off one sense, it tends to heighten the rest of the senses. So closing your eyes, and we just want to get a natural feel for the pelvic floor. So when we sit on the ball, the way I just demonstrated, it really lines up the diaphragm and the pelvic floor beautifully. And when they are lined up, they have the ability to mirror each other. Many of us know that the diaphragm proper descends as we breathe in and it rises as we breathe out. What many don't know is the fact that the pelvic floor mirrors this movement. So coming back to that closed eye position, we're just going to take a breath in and a breath out. So we inhale, and you should feel the pelvic floor gently pressing down on the ball. We're not bearing down, we're not trying to force the pelvic floor to press in the ball. We're just trying to create the sensation of this gentle wave-like feeling of the pelvic floor pressing down on the ball. And then as you breathe out, the pelvic floor should lift up a little bit. And by lift up, I mean you should feel a little bit less pressure on the ball that you're sitting on. So give that a try again, closing your eyes. Inhale. Feel the pressure of the pelvic floor down into the ball. And exhale. Feel the pelvic floor lifting away from the ball. So already, if you're giving this a try with me, you might be like, oh, what the France is going on? I have no idea what I'm feeling for. Please know that this takes time, because these movements are subtle, and I find that oftentimes, at least for myself, I really disconnected myself from this part of my body, from my pelvic area. We're kind of taught early on that, you don't want to, focus too much, you don't want to touch down there, you don't want to do anything like that, but this really requires reconnecting with that feeling in the pelvic floor. So another exercise that you can do is, once again, closing your eyes, take a breath in through the nose, and then exhale through pursed lips like you're trying to blow out birthday candles. And just that act of exhaling through pursed lips, like you're trying to blow out birthday candles, helps to encourage that lift of the pelvic floor just a little bit more. Again, we're not actively squeezing, we're not bearing down, you're just trying to get a feel for that natural flow of the pelvic floor moving down into the ball and lifting away from the ball. So if you've tried that a few times and you're really frustrated by the fact that you're just not feeling it, it just doesn't make sense, you're not getting it, that's okay, because there's other ways that we can kind of get in touch with that breath. And again, with time, you might start to get the sensation. We're just trying to bring awareness. When that awareness comes in, we can start to get back into those natural breathing patterns that we were born with. Before bad posture came into play, before any weakness of the muscles came into play because we're aging, before we had kids, before we became pregnant. So these are all things that affect our pelvic health, and it really does start with alignment. I've talked about often how I can think back to the second grade, sitting on the floor in an assembly in the gym, and I was sitting up nice and tall, and I looked around, and everybody else was kind of hunched over. And I was like, oh, I'm too big. I shouldn't take up that amount of space. So I immediately went like this, and that is the moment that I started having quote-unquote bad posture. So, if you're having trouble connecting with that pelvic floor, we're getting back to the point here, this is where the strap would come in. So, you would wrap the strap around your rib cage. So usually I go for about like the bra strap area, a little bit lower, where the belt is around the rib cage. And I put this nice white belt so you can see it kind of on my black shirt. So, we create a little bit, we don't want it snug and squeezing, we want it to be loose but still fitting around the body. So instead of focusing on that movement of the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, which sometimes it just takes starting to visualize those things, we focus instead on ribcage breathing. A full expansion of the ribcage three-dimensionally as we breathe in, and then it falling back again as we breathe out. So again, we create that little bit of tightness, and I mentioned the word three-dimensional because some of us are chest breathers. We get this feeling of rising and falling, which is why this whole concept of lowering on the in-breath and rising on the out-breath might seem a little bit strange, because when we're chest breathers, this is feeling of lifting as we breathe in and lowering as we breathe out. This is actually backwards. So remember, lowering down, inhale, pelvic floor diaphragm lower down, exhale, rises back up. And it's just a very gentle wave-like feeling. So with ribcage breath, we want to be able to send the breath not just into the front of the body, but into the sides and into the back of the body as well. So we close our eyes, we have the band again, kind of against the skin, but not squeezing tightly. So we can start to feel that resistance against the strap when we breathe in. So again, I encourage closing the eyes to start this off. Take a breath in, three-dimensionally, exhaling. So you should be able to feel the ribcage moving against the front of the band, against the sides of the band, and against the back of the band. So what would this ribcage technique have to do with the lowering of the pelvic floor on the in-breath, I'm going to move back up, and the rising on the out-breath? So sometimes we just got to take confidence in the fact that when the ribcage and the pelvic floor are perfectly stacked, that this natural movement of the body is happening. We've put ourselves in this alignment where they can mirror each other. Again, gently lowering on the inhale, rising on the exhale. So if we put ourselves in that proper position, we just got to take a little bit of confidence from the fact that this is working and I'm good to go, but we still need to make sure that we are breathing to our fullest capability. There's so much more to the lungs than just the front of the lungs. We want to make sure that breath is going into every surface of the lungs, both front, back, sides, etc. So when we do this style of breathing, we're not necessarily bringing that focus into the pelvic floor, and the diaphragm, but we are bringing that focus into a more efficient breath. Again, if you're practicing this at home, I encourage definitely practicing this, and you're not getting that sensation of the pelvic floor, the strap is a great alternative when we put ourselves in proper alignment. When you're laying on the floor, if you've got that natural curve in the lower back and you can kind of slide some fingers underneath the lower back, then in that position, you don't really have to think about it at all. You're just in beautiful alignment. That's just the way it is. When you come to seated, it takes a little bit more effort, which is where you're going to want to go back and watch that first part of this video series. So that's all I got today. So I hope this all gave a little bit more clarity. Again, just starting to bring this awareness into alignment, breath, and then the next two parts of the series is going to start to bring that awareness in, start to allow those muscles to start working synergistically again. And when we bring that awareness in, when we get that feeling, we don't need to create a kegel or a contraction in order to start drawing back some of those symptoms, some of those pelvic floor concerns that we're talking about. So again, I mentioned at the beginning, 85% reduction just with awareness. So alignment, breath, that's where we're at right now. We've got 2 more parts coming up in the next couple weeks. So definitely stay tuned to that. Next week, I'll be going live again at 2 p.m. The following week, I forgot that there was something else I had planned, so I'll have to switch the time on that. But in the meantime, if you are interested in learning more about this core pelvic health stuff, the brand new series is open for registration over on the website. So I put the link in the little description, www.bodymindfitness.ca. So this is the last round of classes for 2019 before we come back in January. So we've got core and pelvic health yoga, we've got prenatal yoga, mama and babe, and we've got mobility and strength, which kind of steps away from a lot of this pelvic floor stuff. We bring some of those concepts in, but it is not the focus of the class. The evening classes only have 2 spots left in both of them. So if you are interested, make sure you get in there, sign up for those classes so you don't miss your chance. And if you're interested in trying out, because you don't really know if you want to commit to 7 full weeks with me, you can drop into any of the classes right now and come into a drop-in, and your first class at the studio is always going to be $10. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, please leave them in the comments. Again, if you were watching this during the replay, I would love for you to hashtag replay so I know you were there. And anytime you feel like you need a little bit more conversation on this or a little bit more insight, you can definitely reach out to me through my DMs. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for dedicating your time towards this video and for joining me this afternoon. I know your time is precious, and the fact that you took some time out of your day today to join me means the world to me. And I always want to make sure I'm bringing you content, so that's why I've got my inbox open up to you for anything that you may need. Aside from that, that's all I've got for today, and I will be back next week with part 3 of 4, and I will see you then. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.